Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We got a great show for you guys today. We'll discuss a minor injury to a major star on the Pittsburgh Penguins, and while the Pens don't have much to play for, this could be a very important couple of weeks for said star. Then, well, the baby Pens, they continue to provide excitement day in and day out. We'll talk about them punching their ticket to the Calder Cup playoffs and who we're most excited to see take on that gauntlet. And then we'll close things out with a newer segment, a segment that's done a lot on sports radio, but one that we want to adapt for Tip of the Ice-Burgh, which is called What's More Likely. Let's get started on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. If you're watching us right now on Tip of the Ice-Burgh on YouTube, I think you noticed the theme of today. It's opening day, baby, which means we're going to get better weather, which means nice matinee in the sun. Bucco games are in the near future. Of course, that's probably not for a couple months. It's probably going to be cold, chilly, poncho weather at the Bucco games at PNC Park for the next couple of months, but we're getting closer to the best weather. We're getting closer to the best golf. Vibes are immaculate right now on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. We're both wearing Pirates gear. So before we get into anything else, Horwat, I'll ask you this. Do you have a record prediction for them battling Buccos?
A record prediction for the Pirates. This season's going to be another tough one. I mean, do things ever change when it comes to the Pittsburgh Pirates? 76 wins the last two seasons, 100 losses the year before. It's Pirates season. The Dogs are ready. I think it's going to be another disappointing season. I'll give them 74 wins just because I don't have high hopes. I do think Paul Skeens can win a Cy Young even with a poor record in terms of team record. He'll be most of those 72, I believe. And before we turn it to you, are you planning on coming up to any Bucco games this year? I'm sure the answer is yes, but do you have any ideas yet? I already have my tickets for the T-shirt giveaway that looks like a Blink-182 shirt. We're going to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I don't have any plans for specific games, but you bet your sweet Bippy I'm going to be up at PNC Park a bunch this year. So you have, 72, 74 is what you were around. You know what? I'm always more optimistic when it comes to the Buccos than I probably should be. I see them doing it for the first time since 2018. I see them getting a winning record, which sad that is the, them doing the thing kind of thing. But I think they're going to go 84-78, which puts them right on the precipice of a playoff spot. But I'm not going to be as bold as to say they're going to be a playoff team in 2025.
No, we can't go that far. But you are making it, it seemed like it'll be a packed house. I think it's a late August game that the Blink-182 shirt is.
If they're going to have a winning record, then yeah, it's going to be a packed house. We know Pirates fans show up for winning baseball.
Yeah, that is one thing that's for sure. If there is some sort of winning baseball going on, home opener, winning baseball, and then
4th of July.
4th of July is big. And then usually if an opposing team usually has a good traveling crowd, like the Phillies do well.
Mets do well.
And wherever Shohei does well. And I know it's been the Dodgers. Yeah, and the Dodgers games did do well. And actually opening the season against the Yankees, it's home opener, so there's already a bit of a handicap there. Yeah. But that one, I believe the Yankees did well whenever they were here last time, too.
Yeah, so that's your daily dose of baseball talk. I'm not sure how much we're going to talk baseball as the offseason progresses, but honestly, if they're doing well, hard to not talk about them a little bit, especially as we get into the wee days of the offseason where there's not much going on. But let's talk some Pittsburgh Penguins hockey here. Obviously, the one big storyline surrounding the team right now is Evgeni Malkin dealing with a minor injury. He was a late scratch for Tuesday night's game against Tampa with an upper body injury. He did practice yesterday in a non-contact capacity. And according to Mike Sullivan, quote, "It's probably too early to say if he'll play later tonight, but I would say he's day to day." And that is per Penn's inside scoop on Twitter. So we're not going to spend too much time on this because he could be out there on the ice tonight and it could be a moot point. But what are your thoughts on Gino dealing with this minor ailment?
It's tough. These ones are tough whenever they come out of nowhere. It's one of those last second scratches. Whenever they're hitting the ice for warm-ups and he's not there type of deals. Those ones are usually a little tougher. You kind of wonder where it may have spurred from. And Malkin's one of the guys that more often than not does take part in morning skates, and especially in the optional ones. He's usually the sole veteran that does does that sort of thing. I cannot remember now what the morning skate situation was. I think it was full team, so no difference. But I mean, the ones that where you skate full participation in the morning skate, or even if you're there at all, and then you're not on the ice for warmups, you get a little bit more jogged in your head. You don't know exactly what it is. And it being upper body could really be anything. And, but the fact that he is skating is always a positive sign, even if it is non-contact. It's a little bit more perplexing. I get perplexed by those ones. Those late scratches, they're tougher to identify. Now suddenly with a new game about to happen, you're trying to think back of the last game if there was any sort of moment that something could have happened, or even during a practice.
Yeah.
Tough to tell, but I think day-to-day is usually a good sign as well.
Yeah, there was nothing really glaring that happened in the overtime period against the Florida Panthers made it look like, oh yeah, that might have been when it happened. So I'm not going to speculate on what it could be. Neither of us are going to do that, but I will say it makes sense that the Penguins at this juncture exercise an abundance of caution with Evgeni Malkin, because if they have any hopes of doing anything of substance next year, they need Evgeni Malkin to be at the top of his game. Whatever that looks like at the age of 39, they need him to be at his best. And there's no need to send this guy into the offseason with rehab on the calendar, right? If it's something small, let it fully heal. If it's something bigger, then 100% you're going to deal with it. But there's no need for him to play through anything at this stage. The Penguins are not mathematically eliminated, but all but mathematically eliminated at this point. And as much as he probably wants to be out there, as much as he probably wants to play because he knows that he has far less games in front of him than he does behind him, you don't need him having rehab on the calendar as the summer begins. So I'm sure they're going to exercise an abundance of caution. If that means sitting him in Buffalo, even if he's probably ready to go, I think that's what that means for the Penguins at this point.
Yeah, it is one of those situations where they're not mathematically eliminated, you're right, but the odds have been at 0% for quite a while. Every now and again, they've jumped to 0.1% on Money Puck, but yeah. I still take that as 0. Hit me with full numbers, and then maybe we could talk, but with about 9 games remaining, you don't want to say just shut them down for the year because of that not mathematically eliminated portion.
Yeah, and I'm not saying shut them down for the year. I'm just saying, like, if it's 50-50 or if it's 70-30, wait till it's like 90-10.
Yeah, wait until it's 90-10, especially depending on what it is. If we do have to remember, and this is something that we all forget quite often, he's holding off a surgery until he retires.
Well, yeah.
Somewhere in his, I believe it's the wrist.
It's the elbow.
So if it's something related to that, I mean, yeah, wait until it's, or at least around that. Wait until that's fully recovered before pushing anything to before long-term damage happens. But if it's something different, go with the 90-10. You're not trying to push anything at this stage of the season. And make sure he's set to go essentially for next season. It's at that point. Just make sure he's fully healthy and within his own head, ready for what could be the farewell tour. I am farewell tour.
I mean, I guess you could print the T-shirts. I am farewell tour, but we don't know that yet. Let's not put the cart before the horse. He has not explicitly said next season is his last. It's just been widely speculated upon by very many, including the two of us here on the tip of the iceberg. So obviously we'll wait for updates. The Penguins will have a morning skate today, and then of course they'll take on the Buffalo Sabres later tonight. Let's talk about the Baby Pens, because they, as the Penguins at the top of the organization, continue to get closer and closer to the end of the season. The Baby Penguins continue to bring excitement, and last night the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Pens clinched their playoff spot in the Calder Cup playoffs in a 4-3 overtime win over Hartford. And I'm going to say this, we can't put it up here because of copyright reasons, but if you have not seen the overtime winning goal scored by Avery Hayes, it was his second of the game, you need to go watch it. It is on my Twitter account at Nick Belsky. It is on our show's Twitter account at Ice-Burgh Podcast. Go watch it after the show, or, bring it up on a secondary device. Watch it, because it is some Pavel Datsyuk, Peter Forsberg type crap that he pulled in overtime on a breakaway. An absolutely nasty goal to send the Baby Pens to the playoffs. You saw the goal. I mean, the stones on that kid to say, you know what, in this situation where there is a little bit on the line, obviously clinching a playoff spot is a big deal, to be able to pull that out of his bag and have that highlight now that's going to back him for the remainder of his development, everybody's going to go back and say, yeah, that Avery Hayes, that's that guy. Like, that is a tentpole moment of the season for a guy that has had a very good season in Wilkes-Barre.
Oh, for sure. I remember going into the season, I'd only ever heard of the name Avery Hayes. There wasn't much of, well, here's the numbers, here's what he can do, here's where he stands in the system. After this situation, it is, all right, that's one of those take notice moments. You see what he can do. He's got this kind of skill. We know he can bring it with confidence at that level, at that moment. I'm sure it was it's one of those goals where you're bringing fun into hockey again.
Yeah.
Because what would most old heads say? You don't pull a move like that in overtime. You're trying to win the game. You're not trying to do it in a fancy way. Well, I mean, it's looking into the future. That's more fun. That is a fun way of doing it. And however it works, it works. He scored the goal. Had the goalie made the save, okay, maybe he comes back and does something else. He has another opportunity, because part of my thought process is when you have there's no way he was thinking this, but as I continue to roll my head around it, when you have a goalie like Sergei Murashov behind you, go ahead.
Confident. Yeah.
Go ahead and do some dumb things. You may be able to get a save right after you widely miss the net trying to do some fancy deke or something. But because this one panned out, this one works, not only does Murashov get that win again, boy, is he good at that level.
Yeah.
You now have that highlight to stick in your back pocket and show that you have hands. You have a certain skill that some other prospects might not. You have that confidence, and lost in a lot of this is that pass. What a perfect set, just a perfect leading pass from Ponomarev.
Yeah.
It won't get as much talk. It really shouldn't, but I just wanted to throw it out there because that was just a perfect layup pass on an open ice 3-on-3. That's the kind of pass that NHLers are just begging to be able to make.
Yeah, I mean, pass it to open ice. Don't pass it to the man. Like, lead Avery Hayes, allow him to kind of skate into it, but don't pass it too far, because the Wolfpack goaltender is going to come out. So, yeah, I agree with you. Very underrated, and what might get lost in the shuffle here is the pass from Vasily Ponomarev. But the other thing, you took the words right out of my mouth. Sergei Murashov is now 11-0 at the American Hockey League level. The dude is unreal. So, with him backstopping that team, they're obviously going to be looked at as one of the top competitors in the Eastern Conference of the AHL playoffs. But this is the second straight postseason appearance for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, 2 for 2 under Kyle Dubas. He said a lot of things whenever he became the general manager, but one of the things that stood out is he wants to put more attention and put more care into the minor league teams. Wheeling's having a good season, and now, it's a small feather in the cap. It's a small notch in the belt. But the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins are now 2 for 2 in making playoffs under Kyle Dubas and Jason Spezza as well. Now, last year they were dispatched in 2 straight games against Lehigh Valley. That was a 5 seed in Wilkes-Barre, losing to a 13 seed in Lehigh Valley. So you're hoping that they have a better showing. But right now they're currently tied for the 3 seed in the AHL's Eastern Conference. Let me ask you this before we get to what's more likely, Horwat. Who are you most excited to watch this spring out of this roster for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins?
Oh, that's tough. I would start with the goalies. Whoever they decide to go with, I think, is going to be exciting to watch. I believe Jarry's eligible for what it's worth.
Yeah, but Jarry's not going to play any of those games.
They're not
going to give him all to Murashov. They're going to give him all to Larson. They're going to give him all to Blomqvist. There's no need for Jarry to go down and play the AHL playoffs at this point.
Yeah, there's not. But that was just a quick note of I'm excited to watch the goalies. Let us remember that Jarry is technically eligible, I believe. Outside of the netminders, I mean, that's where it really peaks for me. I mean, Owen Pickering in bigger situations is a pretty big one. Again, just the continuation of Rutger McGroarty at that level, seeing how he can continue to progress. Pretty much the whole roster essentially is my answer. But if I had to narrow it down, I'm going to say the goalies and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, Sergei Murashov is the free space in this question, but give me playoff Rutger McGroarty. Lost in the shuffle here is, this guy has had a tremendous season. He has continued to build day upon day, week upon week, and gotten better as the season has gone on. But the one thing that he never needed to gain was a clutch gene. The guy has 16 points in 14 games played in the World Juniors, had 1 bronze medal and 1 gold medal as the captain of Team USA. So what does playoff Rutger McGroarty look like at the AHL level? That is something I'm 1000% going to be keying in on because he's the Penguins' top prospect, and he's been playing as such late into the season. Outside of that, obviously, we're excited to see Ville Koivunen because he has been ridiculous. We're excited to see Vasily Ponomarev because he has, as you mentioned earlier, been very understated at that level. We're excited to see, what can Valtteri Puustinen do in some playoff hockey. But Avery Hayes, man, Avery Hayes is feeling it. He signed his ELC a couple weeks ago. He has been tremendous all season, and he had 2 goals last night. Like, forget about the OT winner. That was his second of the game. So this kid is feeling it right now. He is shooting up the organizational depth chart, and he knows if he has a great playoffs, that puts him in prime position to be able to potentially make his NHL debut next season. And I think he knows what's at stake. And as we saw last night, this kid doesn't really care about pressure. It doesn't seem like it, at least from the outside looking in. So I'm excited to see what he does with that and what magic he can make in the playoffs.
It'll be a ton of fun. I'm sure the magic of those sort of fancy moves takes a bit more of a backseat even in the playoffs, because that's really where, it should. However, if you get the right opportunity and the right chance, and you are in your head, you have a sure shot at that, go for it. Make it fun, because that is part of what's making that Wilkes-Barre team so special, is they are just having so much fun. And they're winning games. It's great to see. They're building that chemistry between each other. They're building that bond between each other that when it gets to the NHL, we talked about this before, when it gets to the NHL, it's going to be entertaining as all hell, and it's going to be fun to watch. I don't want to say it's akin to what the Sharks are doing, because the Sharks are having so much fun with Celebrini and Will Smith and losing quite a bit.
Yeah.
But they're just building that bond and know that the future is bright wherever they go.
Yeah. If you want a little bit more of a positive spin on it's similar to the Sharks situation, what is one thing the Sharks don't have? That's a winning culture already in place. The Sharks have a history of winning, but those guys aren't stepping into a team that still has Patrick Marleau playing at the top of his game, Joe Thornton playing at the top of his game. These kids are going to come up, and Sidney Crosby, as we speak, is still very much so at the top of his game, and the winning, the winning locker room, the winning culture is still in place in Pittsburgh. And I think that is what's going to be the major difference between the Shark situation and the Penguins. Now, I'll also say this: Will Smith, Macklin, Celebrini probably would be 1-2 when it comes to Penguins prospects. They are far and away above and beyond better prospects, but you're hoping these Penguins prospects coming up with that added bonus of stepping into a winning culture in Pittsburgh is going to help them be better than the sum of their parts. We've seen that in the past, right? Brian Rust was not expected to be this blue chip, grade A, tier 1 prospect, and now he's a guy that every single year you can count on him to score 20 plus, most years 25 plus, and this year 4 goals away. We talked about it Tuesday. He scored a goal Tuesday night, the lone goal, but he is closing in. But the last thing I want to say is we've talked a lot about Avery Hayes and his goal last night, but he's much more than just one highlight reel goal. Has 21 goals on the season in 50 games, 39 points in that same amount of time. He's filling the back of the net. He's filling the score sheet, and he is certainly opening some eyes in the Pittsburgh Penguins fan base and organization as well. Let's close out this show with a segment that, again, is widely done, but we're going to retrofit it for Tip of the Ice-Burgh and for the Penguins, which is called What's More Likely. I'll give 2 scenarios. Horwat and I will delineate or deliberate, or whatever word you want to use, about which one is more likely to happen. Let's start off where we left off in the last segment. What is more likely, Horwat? Harrison Brunicke makes his NHL debut next season, or Avery Hayes, this is his episode, makes his NHL debut next season?
You lead off with a tough one because they're so young and still kind of fresh to the organization in a way. But if I had to narrow it down and pick one, I'm going to give the bump to Avery Hayes. The forward position is just a bit more stout. There's a bit more meat there. There's a bit more opportunity for promotion, for that kind of jump, even if it's for a game or two. Whereas Harrison Brunicke is obviously a solid prospect and has definite pieces to make the NHL one day. I just think they probably want to keep him stewing in the AHL for a little bit and sort of treat him almost like they did with Evgeni Malkin this year. Just all season there, really get your reps in and make the jump at the right time. That's just the way I see it. It also depends on the amount of injuries that pile up everywhere.
Yeah.
But that goes with every prospect at every position and every team. No point in bringing that into the conversation. But I think boiling it down without injuries involved, I'm going to go Avery Hayes. If anything, he goes first and Brunicke comes after. I could see both. It just depends.
Yeah, I could definitely see both as well. But what's more likely? I think I'm going to disagree. I know common sense would say, hey, one is playing professional hockey this year and one played juniors. But at the same time, Harrison Brunicke was this close to making his NHL debut last October. He was that good in the preseason. And then he went to the WHL. He struggled with some injuries, but he still put together a pretty good season. He's heading to Wilkes-Barre right now. So we're going to get to see what he looks like in these playoffs because he's going to sign an ATO and he's going to play in the postseason for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Now, how much opportunity does he get? Considering the fact that he's coming in at the end of the season and these other defensemen have been there the whole year and they kind of earned that role, that remains to be seen. That's all up to Kirk McDonald. But Brunicke was very, very close. As we talked about, it took until the last week of the preseason for the Penguins to send him back to Kamloops. I think there's a chance that if the Penguins go out and trade Erik Karlsson, which that'll be in one of these scenarios as well, that right side is really going to be up for grabs. Yeah, there's a good bit of names there. There's Ryan Shays, who just got a new contract. There's Connor Timmins, who needs a new contract, but seems to be in the good graces, or at the very least, looked at positively by the Penguins organization. But Harrison Brunicke looked mature, looked poised, looked like he was ready for an opportunity. Not to say that he's NHL ready, but he looked like he was ready for an opportunity to show what he's got. Avery Hayes, to me, I think there's just too many people in front of him. Like, he's too far back in the line. Now he has jumped in front of a lot of people in line this year, but he hasn't jumped in front of the Rutger McGroartys. He hasn't jumped in front of the Ville Koivunens. He hasn't jumped in front of the Vasily Ponomarevs, but he has gotten up there to where he's probably option 4, option 5, to where he has an opportunity next year to make his NHL debut. But to me, it just feels like Brunicke is that caliber higher and that guy that when you're a second round pick, you are going to have the full weight of the organization behind you. Whereas if you are an undrafted guy that comes in and earns everything, it's going to take you a little bit longer to progress on that line.
Yeah, I get that. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some growing, but yeah, like I said, it's all going to be fun. It's all going to be fun to keep an eye on, and we're excited about what the future holds for either name and all the names that we're mentioning when it comes to Wilkes-Barre. Just an exciting time to be a young kid in this organization.
Speaking of young kids, let's go to the next one here. What's more likely? Rutger McGroarty scores 10 goals at the NHL level next season, or Rickard Rakell repeats as a 30-goal scorer for the Penguins?
Man, why you got to do that?
Yeah, I didn't make these easy on you.
No, because mostly because, all right, well, here, I'll go with this. I'm going to say my answer is Rutger because I'm just going to remain on the same trajectory that I have. I've already questioned if Rakell can do this again. So why not just continue that and give my vote of confidence to Rutger McGroarty in what should be a proper rookie season, I believe. I forget how all that works. In his proper first big stint in the NHL, 10 goals, I think, for him is very possible, given the right opportunities. And I've already sort of discounted the idea of Rakell doing this again. So that's sort of where I stand on it. I could see them both happening. I just do think 10 goals from McGroarty is more likely than Rakell continuing this one more year.
Yeah, very realistic that both of these occur next season is where I'm at. But the very important 3 words that you said in that answer was given the opportunity. I'm not sure how the Penguins view their young crop of players. Very well could mean that they come into camp next year and 3 of them start the season on the roster and they're saying, this is the youth movement from day one, we're starting it. Or they could do what they've continued to do all season this year, and they could continue to be extremely cautious and extremely careful with the trajectory of these young players. So because of that uncertainty, I'm going to go with Rickard Rakell in this one. And I like the fact that we're on opposite ends for the first two here. I hope that sets the table to be on the opposite end for all 6 of these scenarios. But Rakell, if he plays for the Penguins, guaranteed 20 goal scorer. So to me, 30 is not unrealistic. If he plays with Crosby all year next year, the same way he played with Crosby all year this year, 30 is definitely realistic for Rickard Rakell. So again, I could see both of these happening, but the uncertainty surrounding the plan for Rutger McGroarty right now, and let's be honest here, a lot of it likely hinges upon how he performs in the playoffs over the next couple of months. But that uncertainty is why I'm gonna skew Rickard Rakell in this one.
Fair enough. And I get that too. It does depend on the plan. I just do have a big vote of confidence in all these guys, all these minor leaguers, being given good chances next season. We'll see. It does depend on this playoffs, how the front office wants to build the team. I think it should be turning. It's tough whenever you have Crosby, Malkin, Letang still around. I feel like the vibe should be not turning into the Buffalo Sabres in terms of vibes, but giving a lot of young guys a chance and kind of getting that average age decreased as much as possible. It's going to be hard to do with all the veterans on the roster, but maybe the year after, that's kind of the direction the team starts to take, is giving all of the kids their go. But
yeah, you still have guys like Noel Acciari on the roster for next year that, I mean, as of right now, there's no indication that he's going to get traded, so he might be here next year. You got guys like Tommy Novak who are going to earn opportunities.
Yeah.
So there's not an abundance of opportunity at the NHL level at this current moment. We'll see how the offseason goes, and then we'll see what the plan is for the Penguins as they enter the 2025-26 season. Now, let's talk about that offseason for this next one. What's more likely? The Penguins trade Erik Karlsson this summer, or the Penguins trade for JJ Peterka of the Buffalo Sabres?
I think Karlsson getting traded is more likely. I know we went over the percentages last episode on the Peterka thing. I said it was more likely that they shoot for Peterka than they shoot for Mitch Marner, which, but I think above all of that is another Erik Karlsson trade. Now we'll see once the offseason starts, essentially, is when we'll start to hear those sort of rumors trickle out, what teams could be involved, where the calls are heading, where the conversations are going. But for now, I would say another Erik Karlsson trade sounds like the more likely option than JJ Peterka.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And this is the first one that we'll agree on, because it feels like trading Karlsson at this point has tipped over 50% likelihood. Like, I'm not going to say that there's a 100% chance that he's gone, because you never know what could happen, but it feels like it's tipped more towards 50% chance he's not there than 50% chance he is returning to the Penguins for a third season. So because of that, I'm going to agree there, but I think the gap is not too far off. The question that I have is, who else is eyeing Peterka? Like, that's not a name that is going to be, just the Penguins want him. There's going to be a lot of people. If the Buffalo Sabres do make him available this summer, there's going to be a lot of teams that are calling and interested. So who else is eyeing Peterka? And also, how aggressive is Kyle Dubas going to be to bring in a guy like this? Because you're going to have to pony up a lot of assets to bring in Peterka.
Oh, yeah. It was already a high price at the deadline. I can't remember what it was now. But, I mean, if the Penguins have been connected with the Sabres on players, on names, I mean, why not let that connection continue? And like I said, Buffalo's in for a rude awakening this summer. Who knows who survives in terms of the entire organization, by the way. I mean, it could be a rough change between players, coaching staff, and, well, maybe not coaching staff. They like Lindy Ruff a lot, but front office too. Who just depends on how the Pagulas want to handle this. Recently voted worst ownership group in the NHL, the Pagulas.
Yeah. Oh, well. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Again, I just can't shake the quote from Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet and 32 Thoughts, the podcast, when he said, JJ Peterka has Pittsburgh written all over him. Man, I'd love to see him in the black and gold.
JJ Pittsburgh.
No,
it works.
It stop trying to make Pittsburgh work. It doesn't. Let's go to the next one here. What's more likely? Jack St. Ivany, a forgotten name in this season, becomes an NHL regular next year, or Sam Poulin finally breaks through and becomes an NHL regular?
Oh, okay. I'm going to give the bump to Sam, just because I did totally forget about Jack St. Ivany this year. I think he's dealt with injuries too, so there's a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll give the bump to Sam Poulin because he's going to have to learn, it seems at least, how to play depth center rather than be the top line, top six winger or scoring forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that, maybe not fourth line, but that third, fourth line, that bottom six center positions might be opening up for him to take. I mean, he's already been in the organization for a long time and has gotten his cracks at the NHL. And in terms of time spent in the organization, deserves another crack at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of earning it now. And I'd say he gets that. I would say he gets that spot over a guy like Nolachari. We'll see what happens with Novak in terms of where he lands. But there could be a couple of center positions opening up in the Penguins depth, and Sam Poulin needs to earn his spot there.
Maybe not even at center, but also at wing.
Yeah.
Because Poulin has that versatility. Last year, he switched to center, and he became one of the better scorers for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. But quietly, he's put up career numbers at the AHL level in goals and points this year. And while Jack St. Ivany falls under the same category as Harrison Brunicke in that, yeah, it's going to be the Wild West on the right side of the Penguins defense at the NHL level. And we've seen Jack St. Ivany come up and perform at that level in late 2024. I want to lean towards St. Ivany, but I have the same thought as you, is like Sam Poulin has started to accept that depth role. And maybe we pegged this season incorrectly for Poulin. He did sign a 2-year contract last offseason. Maybe this was the year that they said, hey, we're shifting plans for you. You're going to play more penalty kill. You're going to play in the bottom six. You're going to learn how to play a depth role at the AHL level so that you can move up to the NHL and potentially become a solid fourth liner at the NHL level. Think guys like Scott Wilson. Think guys like Tom Kuhnhackl. And I understand neither of those guys were first-round picks, but that's the trajectory that potentially we're looking at with Sam Poulin. Is this was the year that he had to adapt to playing that different role, and next year is the show me year, because we were always saying it's the show me year, it's do or die, but he signed that 2-year contract, and that's what we could never get over. Maybe this is the plan, and again, it's pure speculation, but maybe this was the plan, that Sam Poulin, if given some opportunities, he's going to get some opportunities, but he's going to spend this season adapting to a fourth line role or a third line role. I think more so, it looks like what he could be at his best next season is a good, well-rounded fourth liner for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, I could see that. I remember heading into last season, I asked Kyle Dubas about Sam Poulin pretty specifically and where he sees him in terms of the organization. And this was last season, so a lot of time has passed, so a lot could have changed. But going into last year, Dubas and the Penguins almost expected Poulin to be a regular NHLer by the end of the season. Mm-hmm. We saw how the year went, not great for the team and for Poulin. So maybe it was during last season, where it was, all right, we're going to start shifting things. I believe he dealt with injuries too, or at least something.
He did. Yeah. He was going to get more opportunities at the NHL level, but there was always an injury and mistimed until the late in the season when he got that chance.
Yeah. So maybe there was something that happened over the course of the season, maybe even in the off season, where they kind of realized the proper trajectory for him needs to shift. And then, like you said, he took this season sort of working on it. And I bet if I was to go in and ask Kyle Dubas now, maybe he would say, going into next season, we are expecting full NHL time for him in this sort of situation. There was that vote of confidence then heading into last season that they wanted him to be a full-time NHLer. And if they still have that confidence and they still have that pride, then absolutely he's going to get more of a bump than Jack St. Ivany, which, again, I just forgot was here. Going to be so honest. I forgot he was here. And who knows what kind of defense this team has next year.
Let's turn up the heat a little bit to close out the show. We got 2 more here. Let's start with this one. What's more likely? The Penguins win a playoff series next season, or the Penguins bottom out once again and end up drafting Gavin McKenna?
So the Gavin McKenna part's where I think, The odds for both are very low.
Yeah, earlier we had one that we
Wow.
said, yeah, both are likely here, but this one, it feels like neither are likely, but what is more likely is the name of the segment.
Fighting mere percentage points here.
Yeah.
I would say, and because of the Gavin McKenna caveat, I'm going to say the playoff round is more likely, because they could bottom out and pick second.
Yeah.
Again, it's that sort of situation could happen, and that's sort of where the odds kind of again continue to trim the draft pick part of it. Whereas just winning a playoff round's a number, and it's probably going to stay at that number. It's not a high number, but it's not going to shrink at all. So I'm going to go with the playoff round just by sheer Gavin McKenna. If you would have just said bottom out and win a lottery and be in the lottery again, I'd go that one. But because of the specific number 1 overall pick, playoff round. Plus, this team's going for it, right?
Yeah, it feels like the team at the very least is going to attempt to be better next year than they were this year. Now, of course, that's attempt. They could fail miserably. They were supposed to be better last year than they were the year prior in the final of Ron Hextall, and they got worse. So, again, who knows what happens on that standpoint, but I think a playoff series is more likely as well because there are some professionally bad teams in the National Hockey League right now. I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks, is there any hope that they're going to do anything next year? Unlikely. Is there any hope that San Jose is going to be able to turn the corner next year? Unlikely. Is there any hope that Buffalo figures it out after 16 years of failures? Unlikely.
There was hope going into the season with Buffalo, at least. I don't know anymore.
The more years that you go in with that hope and you come out with less, eventually it's going to be like, yeah, you need to prove to me that you're going to be able to sniff 500, let alone get out of the basement of the NHL. But I will say this, for the uninitiated, Gavin McKenna, what a dream that would be. I mean, if you look at what he did and accomplished last week, most points in a draft -1 year than anyone in the history of the CHL outside of Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
Sidney Crosby in his draft -1 year, which means the year before his draft year, 135 points in 59 games for Rimouski. Gavin McKenna, 129 points in 56 games. So if he would have played those 3 games to equal out with Crosby, it might have been a nail-biting race here. This kid is the best prospect, at least expected to be the best prospect since Connor McDavid in the draft. So again, will he be? Time will tell, but the hype around this kid feels real, and that would be a dream for the Penguins to go from Lemieux to Crosby and then Crosby to McKenna, which they're, again, it's like Crosby was when he came in. Lofty expectations, and the crazy thing about Sid is he not only met those expectations, but he surpassed them.
Yeah.
The likelihood of that happening is very low, but there is a lot of steam behind Gavin McKenna being the best draft prospect that we have seen in quite some time.
The conspiracy theorists would be out so hard for that one.
Our friends at the Caps Chirp podcast, specifically Hockey Troll, would be livid if the Penguins ended up with Gavin McKenna.
However, if the Caps win the Cup this year, I don't think you'd care that much.
I mean, it's small. It's a consolation. It's a consolation for sure. But let's
go ahead.
I was going to say, if you have anything else, we can talk about it. If not, we have one left. And this one, as it should be, circles around the man that we mentioned in the last one, Sidney Crosby. What's more likely? Sidney Crosby wins his 4th Stanley Cup at some point, not saying next season, but he wins another Stanley Cup in his career. Or Sidney Crosby catches Jaromir Jagr for 2nd all-time in points.
Him finishing top 3 would be impressive enough. Going for 2.
You want some facts and figures before you decide here on the second one. The first one's pretty cut and dry. Will he win a cup or not? But the second one, he's 246 points behind Jaromir Jagr. From the age of 35 to 37, he has scored 266 points, so 20 more, but he also has 9 more games to help add to that number. He's under contract for 2 more seasons. If he adds another one after that, maybe you see, if he doesn't fall off a cliff, maybe you see him at the very least get close to that number.
I like those numbers. I like those figures. My question, is this Cup as a player?
Yes.
Okay.
Cup as a player. Not if he comes back as a coach or a general manager or a fun to look at fellow or whatever made up position they will give him if he wants one. This is as a player, skates on the ice. all included.
Captain of the team.
Yeah, he's the one touching the cup first.
Again, we're dealing with low numbers here. I would say the points one, because as long as Crosby, he said it himself, as long as he's still producing and helping the team, he wants to stick around. If he's still producing and helping the team at the age of 44, no one's going to stop him. No one's going to say, hey, Sid, hang it up. And at that point, you'd assume he'd have passed it, right? I mean, no one's catching Gretzky in terms of points. No. Just not happening. It's really stupid, his numbers. So, but going for number 2 is one heck of a consolation. And if it's only, what did you say,
246 away as of this recording, he could score 3 points tonight and lower that number.
Well, he does only need one more to pass Gretzky in that points per game thing.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the team's not good around him at the moment. Should be better next year. You never know. It also depends on the team around him and the way we hype up these prospects. There's a viable reason to believe that they help him get there too. I'm with it. I'm going to say the Jagr points is definitely more likely in the cup, just because the cup is hard to win. It really is. Even with how good that team was, the back-to-back years, that wasn't easy. Neither year was easy. But it's Crosby gaining ground, scoring points. That's almost a guarantee. So I'll go with that one. But he just has to play long enough, and if he stays healthy and continues to produce, he will. He will.
Listen, if he puts up 246 points in the next 3 seasons, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised. Now, he has had a little bit of a sharp drop-off between the last 2 years and this year. He went from 94 points to 93 last year, and now he's at 79. He could probably finish around 84, 85, and I wouldn't be surprised. He could finish around 90 again. He could go over a point per game and add another 10 points to his resume right now, and I wouldn't be surprised. But
have you done the math on 246, by the way? Divided by 3?
It's probably, what, 89 points?
It's season? 82.
82 points.
You know how many games there are in a season?
Oh, my God. So, again, enough said. It is Crosby catches Jagr, which, again, a couple of years ago, I set that expectation for him to get top 5 all time and how great it would be for him to be top 5. Man, the more he plays like this, the more you look at it and you say, top 2? If it's Gretzky Crosby at the end of the day in all-time points, I don't think there's anyone there's not very many people disputing his greatness.
Oh.
But if it is Gretzky Crosby, Gretzky who did that against plumbers and carpenters, Crosby who did it at the tail end of the dead cap era and an era of some of the best goaltending that we have seen, not to mention defensive hockey and size.
Yeah.
I think that would cement his legacy no matter what happens as potentially greatest of all time.
I'm going to take a dark turn. How close would he already be if he didn't suffer that concussion?
Yeah, we don't need to get into that because he would probably, he'd probably, if he didn't suffer that concussion, be 50 points away from Jagr at this point.
Yeah, it'd be a lot closer.
Because he missed like his prime. Like his years of what Connor McDavid's doing that's crazy right now, the 140 points, that's what was taken away from Crosby. So again, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole because it's a dark and sad rabbit hole, and it's opening day, for God's sakes, Horwat. Let's finish on a high note. But the high note is we can't rule out Crosby catching Jaromir Jagr for second all-time in points in NHL history. That's crazy. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe if you enjoy our content, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.